Innocent lives are being lost due to racial bias. This problem is happening now and is a completely fixable problem. African American people are experiencing racial bias every day for no fault of their own. Unarmed African American men are 5 times more likely to be shot by police even if they are unarmed. African Americans only make up 13% of the population, but make up nearly 31% of all shootings in the United States. Some of these victims include Stephen Clark, who was shot in his grandmother's backyard, and Michael Brown, who both were unarmed when the accident occurred. One example of this bias was when an African American male was shot during an Alabama mall shooting. Within that split second, the officer was not sure who or where the shots were coming from, so he decided to shoot at the person who looked most suspicious, an unarmed black male who was actually helping a victim who got shot. EJ was an active military personnel who was fighting for our country. One problem that is directly related to this is how often the police are called on African Americans by white people. For example, a white student attending Yale called the police on an African American student that was sleeping in her common dorm. She was questioned by the police and posted the videos on Facebook, sparking an outrage at the incident. The victim pleaded she paid to attend the school like everyone else. Another problem involving in the fatal encounters with police is how the police officers are not charged with the appropriate charges. In the case of Stephen Clark, a man called on a disturbance in the neighborhood. Helicopters began surrounding him and shot and killed him. Officers waited 5 minutes before calling the medics, but it was too late. No officers were charged for anything. In the case of Michael Brown, this court case shows a brutal side to police brutality. Michael Brown was shot to death by Officer Wilson, who was not charged. Wilson claimed Brown began charging towards him. Meanwhile, other eyewitnesses stated he was attempting to flee. There was not enough evidence within Brown's case, which led to Wilson walking away with no charges. Hate crimes are defined as which are motivated by race, ethnic, sexual orientation, gender, or religious affiliations. There was exactly 4,131 hate crimes in 2017 associated with race, opposed to 3,489 in 2016. Hate crimes are growing especially fast, and more citizens are being targeted. German Lopez stated, "Low conviction and incarceration rates have fed into the idea among critics of law enforcement that police can get away with using deadly force even in situations that don't call for it, which can be said in many cases of these, since many officers who shoot and kill were not charged with anything." Studies have included that the risk of being shot by an officer depends on race, gender, and location at which the encounter occurred, which are things that are out of our control. Protests, riots, and marches have been occurring over the past few years to help get justice for those who are wrongfully shot and killed. Many different associations have been created to help solve this problem, such as Black Lives Matter. This is an international movement created to campaign against racially motivated violence towards the African American community and others. This type of treatment is unfair and can be fatal at times. This must be stopped as soon as possible. Ever since the civil rights movement began in 1954, they have been fighting for the equality which they deserve. We all must come together and help for one big cause. Hopefully, sometime in the future, we can resolve and set aside our differences and live in a country where everyone is treated with equal respect, no matter what race, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." This is a good quote to describe what we must do during this day and age. My call to action would be to participate in any protests, riots, etc. that take place in our cities or states. Participating in these protests or riots will spread awareness of the injustice that is occurring in every city within the United States. Participating in this call to action will help unite us all, change the way the world works, and will help make the world a place where every person feels safe when encountered by a police officer, no matter what race you are.